What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we are finishing up our talks on the Fey Wanderer Ranger, and a lot of you really liked this subclass when we talked about it back on Tuesday. I'll leave an iCard up above for that. When we talked about it and did our ranking, I think that a 9 out of 10 pretty much was the consensus amongst everybody, so I feel like the ranking was good there. But so today we're going to build one, and I've been looking forward to this for a while. This subclass is just really fun and has a ton of opportunities for multi-classing and just different ways that you can build it. Today is just going to be one of those options. But before we do that, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. As you can see, most people who watch the channel are not subscribed, so please don't be one of those people. Help us to reach our goal of 4,000 subs by the end of this year. I really think we can do it, but of course I need your help to do that. So make sure to click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded, and make sure to share the video with your friends. Additionally, if you would like to support the channel just a little bit more and really help to make sure that these videos continue coming out on time and helping me to know that they're worth the time, make sure to consider becoming a member. Becoming a member on the channel is super easy, and really the lowest possible tier is more than perfect for most everybody. For $2 a month, you can support the channel, and of course it really helps me out. You also get write-ups for all of my builds that I do here on the channel. You'll get a fancy document that outlines everything that I've gone through, as well as a quick reference guide for some certain things that we talk about. And you get to keep that. You get to download that, keep that, and it's available for all of my subclass fixes and my build guides. So that is just a little bit of what I can give back to you for that. Of course, if you would like to support a little bit more, I would more than appreciate it. At the silver level or higher, you are going to, of course, get a special shout out on all of my videos. And of course, you're going to get my videos 24 hours early, which is a great perk. Then finally, at the gold tier, you get access to a special part of my Discord where we can hang out, where we can talk about future video topics and that kind of thing. And you get a little bit more input into what kind of content is actually coming out on this channel. So that is another great perk as well. And there are more coming at that gold tier as well. So make sure that you at least consider that. But of course, for all of you who are here watching, I thank you so much for being here. You just watching, it's more than enough. So thank you. So let's talk about this subclass briefly before we start building. This subclass to me has some of the greatest potential for different build options that are viable of almost anything that I've talked about on the channel thus far. And that's saying something, right? We've gone from A to now R, and we've talked about every subclass that's available officially and available through Matt Mercer stuff. And honestly, I think this subclass has the most multi-class ability, if that's a word. Different types of races that work great, different feats that work great. I think just the number of options that are completely viable here are kind of insane. So just so you know, make sure you stay to the end, because yes, I'm presenting one option today in its entirety, but there are so many other options that I'm going to present to you during the honorable mentions. It's kind of nuts. So yeah, the honorable mentions is going to be a little bit beefier this time than normal. But that's good, right? That allows you to kind of get the creative juices flowing. And of course, I always love getting comments down below. Did I pick the right option here, right? Of course, I went with one option of my version, but your version may be one that I listed in the honorable mentions or one that I didn't mention at all. So make sure to hit me up in the comments down below, letting me know if I picked the one that you think is your favorite, or if there's another one out there that you like better. I would love to know that as well. But with all of that out of the way, let's start building. Starting off, of course, we have our race, and we are going to take a race that we haven't taken in a while. I took this race, I believe, a couple of times when we were talking about the cleric. I'll leave my general cleric guide up in the icon above. Of course, you can always check out the playlist for all of the subclasses there. But I took this a couple of times there because it's just really fun. And it's one of my favorite races out there, to be honest, and it's the Leonin. The Leonin allows you to be a lion, which is super cool, right? But it gives you some really awesome synergies with this subclass that we will talk about a little bit later. With this kit, of course, we get things like dark vision. We get a natural claws attack. We're not going to really be worrying about that on this build. but it's there if you want it. We've also got Hunter's Instinct, which is really good. That gives us another skill proficiency, which is nice. But the biggest thing is Daunting Roar. Now, here's the thing. There are other races out there that allow you to spread fear as an action, whatever, and you can do whatever. This allows you to do it as a bonus action, and that's what sets the Leonin apart from other things that we will talk about during our honorable mentions. So yeah, this is a huge advantage. This means that we can cause a fear effect and we still have our action to do whatever we want to do with it. And there's a lot of power with that. So that's why I'm going with this. Again, we will talk about more in the honorable mentions that can do similar things, just not as well in this aspect. Maybe they're better in others. We'll talk about that later. For our stats, of course, we're going to be using our modified standard array once again, as always. Again, like I say in every video, if you're using point buy, if you're using regular standard array, if you're using rolled stats or some other method, my stats are going to look different than yours, and that's fine. Just place yours highest to lowest in the same order that I do, and you may have to adjust your numbers here and there, but generally they're going to be somewhat close. So we're going to put our highest number into our wisdom this week, not dexterity. So that's a big differentiation. Our second highest is going to go in our constitution, third highest in dexterity. Those are interchangeable. So if you'd rather put the dexterity higher than constitution, you can, but you know, we'll talk about that later. Then I'm going to put charisma in my fourth slot. I normally don't really dictate where the bottom three go. I want charisma in my third slot here just because of everything that's going on. So we want a positive modifier on our charisma here. And then strength and intelligence, it doesn't matter. You do whatever you want with it. I don't care. We're not really using them for anything. And so it's fine. Do whatever you want. For our bonuses, of course, we get a +2 and a +1 because this is not one of the newer races that's out there. So we're going to put our +2 into our wisdom and our +1 into our dexterity. And we will, of course, work on those odd numbers a little bit later. For our equipment, we're going to take a quarterstaff and then just take the best medium armor that you can, probably scale mail for now, but if you can find something different, then that's fine. Of course, we're not going to be worrying about any kind of light armor because our dexterity modifier is not that great. You know, it's only a +2, so we're getting the max benefit out of medium armor. So that's going to be good enough. That's what I'm going to go with. And then if you want to take a shield, you can. It's optional. There's nothing in this build that is specific to having a shield. So if you want one, that's fine. If you don't want one, that's also fine. It's really personal preference. So with all that under our belts, let's go ahead and start taking some levels now. So listen, we're not going to be starting with Ranger, okay? I still get comments to this day on builds that are over a year old at this point, telling me that me doing what I am about to do is terrible. It is unoriginal. It is it's just you roll your eyes. I've had that listed specifically, rolls eyes on certain builds. It's fine. You keep commenting all you want. I actually love getting those comments because it helps with the algorithm. And so thanks. I appreciate that. I'm going to continue doing it. We're starting with Fighter. So at Fighter 1, we get some really great benefits by doing this. The biggest one really is that we are going to have Constitution saving throw proficiencies. That's huge because we are going to be maintaining concentration on a lot of spells, right? While we do get a feature to maintain a certain spell without concentration, that just means we get to also maintain concentration on something else. And Rangers get some decent options to maintain concentration on. So I'm going to say we're going to be using our concentration most of the time, right? And so I want to make sure that I'm maintaining that as much as possible. Our AC isn't the best. That's why I suggested possibly taking a shield to help out with that a little bit. But ultimately, it's not going to be anything crazy, groundbreaking. Don't think you're just going to be dodging every single hit that comes in. It's just not going to happen. So we need this in order to help maintain those great spells. And so we get a couple of things here at level 1 of Fighter. We of course get a fighting style, and I'm going to take the dueling fighting style. This allows us to deal extra damage every time that we hit with a weapon that we are holding in one hand, and we don't have anything that is a weapon in the other hand. So you can hold a shield in the other hand because that's not technically considered a weapon, and you can hold your quarterstaff in the other hand. Now you might be thinking, well, if I'm only using one hand, then I am giving up the versatile property, right? I'm not dealing as much damage. don't worry, we're going to solve that here in just a second. We'll get there. We also get second wind at this point, and so second wind gives us a decent little bonus action heal. Don't get too excited about this because we're not going to be in fighter for much at all in this build. It's very, very light. So it's a nice little maybe top yourself off at a certain point, but it's nothing that's really going to save your life on this build anyway. Next up at level 2, we are going to go to Ranger. That's right, we're only taking 1 level right now, and it's going to be a while before we consider going back to fighter actually. So maybe the comments won't be as angry this time. It's all good. So we get a couple of things here. We get Deft Explorer, which gives us Canny at this point, which is basically just half expertise. That's always going to be a good thing. Pick your favorite, whatever you want. And then we also get Favored Foe, which we are pretty much never going to use. It's just worse Hunter's Mark. And so, yeah, I would rather concentrate on Hunter's Mark than this trash. So yeah, don't worry about it. Level 3, we are going to be a Ranger 2. And so we get another fighting style, which is great. We are going to go with the Druidic Warrior fighting style this time around, which is really, really cool. Basically, we get 2 Druid cantrips, and you already know we're taking Shillelagh. Shillelagh allows us to imbue a wood weapon, again, our quarterstaff, with magic, and not only does it bump it up to a D8 in damage, so we don't have to worry about the versatile property anymore, but it also allows us to use our wisdom modifier when it comes to damage and attack rolls. This is huge, right? Now, I always give this little bit of a warning whenever you are using Shillelagh. This will come up, so make sure to talk to your DM before you start using Shillelagh. Shillelagh lasts for a minute, right? It's a bonus action. And so you basically are going to want to always have this up, even outside of combat. So basically, you want to talk to your DM and say, listen, I'm going to essentially have Shillelagh up all the time, right? I'm going to be casting it every minute to make sure that I've maintained it, so that when you enter combat, you've already got that and you don't have to burn a bonus action. That way you can go ahead and just Hunter's Mark right off the bat. If your DM has an issue with this, you know, talk it out, see where you're at on that. But essentially, you want to always have this going so that when combat starts, you're good to go and you're ready to just start swinging. That way you don't have to take that bonus action in order to get this back up, because that's just kind of a waste. Because otherwise you want to be firing off your Hunter's Marks, or maybe even your Daunting Roar, maybe just depending on the situation. So you want to leave that bonus action free. Talk to your DM, tell your DM that you want to always have that going. You're constantly doing it, or you can annoy your DM until he or she gives in by every minute on the dot saying, I cast Shillelagh, wait 1 more minute, I cast Shillelagh, wait 1 more minute. Your DM will give up after a while on that one, so don't worry about it. The other cantrip that I would take here is Thorn Whip. There, of course, are other options that work well, but this allows you to deal with certain spacing issues, and I like that a lot. You can pull enemies to very unadvantageous spots, so I like that. We also get spell casting here, so we get our first level spells. I would take some of the greatest hits here, things like Absorb Elements, Cure Wounds, Entangle, and of course we already mentioned Hunter's Mark, so definitely have all of those ready to go. At Ranger 3, we are going to get Primal Awareness, Dreadful Strikes, Fey Wanderer Magic, and Otherworldly Glamour as we grab our subclass. This subclass gives us a lot of different stuff, which is fantastic. Of course, Primal Awareness gives us some awesome spells, which is great. We can always use extra spells as a ranger. Dreadful Strikes, of course, allows us to deal a little bit of extra damage. As long as we are hitting different foes, we can keep spreading that around, but if you hit one creature during your turn, you'll deal a little bit of extra damage to just that one, and that's fine. We then, of course, have our expanded spell list through Fey Wanderer Magic, which is really, really nice. And then, of course, Otherworldly Glamour allows us to essentially be kind of the face of the party, or at least the backup face of the party, which is pretty cool. So I really like that. At Ranger 4, we get our first ASI or feat, and I'm going to give you 2 options here. The first option, and the one that I am more inclined to take because it's more fun, is the Telekinetic feat. Now, the Telekinetic feat does give us something else to do on our bonus action with the little mind shove power that you get, but it's also a half feat, which corrects our odd number in wisdom. I really like this, and of course, Telekinetic comes with a couple of other things. Usually I use it for the shove, and I think it's a lot of fun there. The other option, if you want to be more boring, but technically it's a little bit better, You can take Resilient Wisdom so that you have proficiency in those saving throws. Mechanically speaking, that's better, but telekinetic's more fun. So go with your gut, whatever you want to do. But I would go with telekinetic here if I was playing it. If you really want to min-max it, go with Resilient and, you know, do what you want to do. Then add, of course, Ranger 5 extra attack, and we also get second level spells here. Things like Aid, Enhance Ability, Healing Spirit, Lesser Restoration, and Spike Growth are all great. Again, the telekinetic feat allows you to move people around. You can do that within the Spike Growth, and so you can push them further into a Spike Growth. Then that way they take more damage by being forced into it, and then they have to take extra damage trying to get back out of it. And so it's just kind of a nasty cycle. So that's a lot of fun, of course. And then finally, next level, level 7. We're going to go back to Fighter and grab Fighter 2. It's been a while, but I couldn't really do anything until I got extra attack. And there's of course a lot of other great Ranger things that I really didn't want to put off. So I wanted to make sure that I went ahead and snagged those first. Here we're of course going to get Action Surge, one of the best fighter features in the game, and it allows you to take a second action, which is fantastic. We will be using this all the time. Well, as many times as we can during a day, of course. We have to make sure that that is always recharged, but it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. And then of course, next level, we're going to go ahead and grab Fighter 3, which gives us our subclass. Now listen, I haven't done this. I don't know if I've done this at all on the channel because I normally will shy away and go with other subclasses, but I'm going kind of vanilla for a reason, because there is so much synergy that I wanted to talk about with the Battlemaster Fighter. Yes, I know, I know that this is something that comes up a lot, but there's a lot going on here that I really like. So you get 3 different maneuvers, and all 3 of these are going to be useful. Number 1, Trip Attack. Trip Attack is very useful for obvious reasons, right? You can make an attack, knock the enemy prone, and then you have advantage on all of your attacks after that if they are melee. Of course, we are going to be benefiting from that, so Trip Attack comes through right there. These other 2 are a little less obvious. Numbers 2, I'm going to take Sweeping Attack. Sweeping Attack is normally, especially when I talked about this, when I talked about the Battlemaster Fighter up in the icon above right there, I talked about how this one really wasn't very useful, and I kind of ranked it pretty low. I didn't really like this one. Here I'm going to take it because it allows you to hit more than one creature with an attack. And wouldn't you know it, we got a feature that we actually get some extra boost in damage. So this allows us to use our Dreadful Strikes in one attack rather than necessarily having to burn multiple attacks just to get an extra D4 or D6 of damage. So that's pretty cool. I like that. But the one that we're going to probably be using the most is Menacing Attack. Now, Menacing Attack, of course, allows you to force a fear effect. And this is going to, of course, work really well with a feature that we're going to get here in a couple of levels when we can force fear effects ourselves. We'll talk about that a little bit more once we get to the actual feature. Until then, we got to get one more level here before we can get there. At Ranger 6, we're going to get our next Deft Explorer feature, and that is Roving. So now, of course, our walk speed has improved amongst other things, and that feels really good. We're now really fast, and we can now get to where we need to go a lot more easily in order to set up these maneuvers, especially when we want to get in there and cause a big fear effect with Daunting Roar. And then we can do it again once we have Ranger 7's Beguiling Twist. Beguiling Twist is basically what Counter Charm always wishes that it was. This essentially means that if a creature nearby you, and by nearby I mean 120 feet of you, which is huge, is forced into making a saving throw against being charmed or frightened, and that creature succeeds, then you basically just say, I'm going to bounce that to somebody else, and now you have to try against my spell saving DC, which is really good because we are a very sad or single ability dependent character this time around. So that's very, very helpful. This is going to be fantastic. So we can now force that out with Menacing Attack. We can also force it out with Daunting Roar, and Daunting Roar may give you, several times to actually check that out, because if you know, a bunch of them fail it and then one of them succeeds, then you get to bounce that around, right? The roar is very limited in its range. However, Beguiling Twist really isn't. So if there's somebody that was not able to get nearby you and you've got one that succeeded, you pop that over to that one enemy that's way off in the distance within 120 feet, and you can pop that one as well. So there's a lot of versatility with that. And being able to force it yourself is so much better than relying on an enemy to try to force that on you. So we want to make sure that there are really reliable ways in order to make this work. Next up, we have Ranger 8, and we get, of course, another ASI or feat, as well as Land Stride. For our ASI or feat, we're going to go ahead and take the Crusher feat. The Crusher feat, of course, allows you to push enemies just a little bit more. Again, it works with the spike growth. Again, it works with your extra attack on your bonus action for telekinetic, and that's really, really fun. It also allows you to take a +1 to your constitution, so that's great. We don't need resilient constitution on this build because we already have the proficiency in the saving throws, so we get to ignore that. So Crusher is a lot more fun, and we actually can get some use out of that, which is really awesome. At Ranger 9, we don't get any features, but we do get 3rd level spells. I would suggest things like a Chardalon Stride, Conjure Animals, and of course, Revivify. Can't really go wrong with that. At Ranger 10, we of course get our next feature for Deft Explorer, and that is Tireless. This of course helps us with our interaction with the exhausted condition, which can be nasty on long trips, so definitely nice. And Nature's Veil in order to give us a little bit of a limited invisibility feature. Always going to be good there. At Ranger 11, we've been waiting for this a long time. Fey Reinforcements. We now get Summon Fey that we can cast without concentrating on it for 1 minute, which is fantastic. 1 minute should be plenty of time for most combats, so it doesn't matter that we're giving up that hour-long duration. And so this means that you can actually concentrate on other things. You can have Hunter's Mark up while you also have this Summon Fey going, which is so nice, right? Or you can have 2 Summon Fays going at once, right? And what's even cooler about this is that if you take the mirthful version, then it actually forces a charmed effect. And of course the DC isn't all that high, but what's great about that is while the DC isn't that great on it, when you bounce it back with the Beguiling Twist at whatever other creature has to take it, that has to work off of yours, which is now very, very high. So that's really good. That's really, really good. So I really like that. You've got multiple ways of forcing the effect of either charm or frighten. And of course, I would talk to your other PCs and see if they can have other options to where this is kind of firing as many times as possible. And you having as good of a wisdom as possible is really what's going to sell this to make sure that there is a lot of value in whatever it is that is happening here. Then at Ranger 12, we of course get another ASI or feat. I'm just going to bump my constitution. If your wisdom is not maxed out at this point, depending on your stats, I would probably go with that. For me, I'm going to go with constitution for now, but like I said, I would go with your wisdom until that's maxed out first, and then we'll go to constitution after that. Next up, of course, at Ranger 13, we get no features, but we do get 4th level spells. Conjure Woodland Beings and Summon Elemental are big ones. So now we can have a Summon Fey and a Summon Elemental, which are awesome. That's awesome to have both going on at the exact same time, or the Conjure Woodland Beings going on while you've also got a Fey creature going in and wrecking havoc. It's really, really cool. At level 14, we get Vanish, which is, it's fine. It's okay. It's a feature that if you had taken a rogue level or 2, then you would already have stuff like this, but it's fine. Then at Ranger 15, we get Misty Wanderer. This basically makes us have Misty Step on steroids, where we can cast it a bunch of times, and wouldn't you know, it's dependent on our wisdom modifier, which is now maxed out, which is really, really nice. And then of course we also get another ASI or feat at Ranger 16. Again, I'm just going to bump constitution there, just kind of shoring up those stats however we need to. And finally, level 20, you can go with Ranger 17 if you want to and grab your 5th level spells. But to me, I'd rather just take another ASI or feat and go with Fighter 4. And then of course you can either bump your constitution if you don't have that maxed out. For me, it's now maxed out, so I'm going to go with dexterity next. Or you could even go with charisma if your charisma is a little lower than you want it to, and you want to make sure that that is bumping everything up. You could also work with that as well. So what do you think of my version of this subclass? It's a fun subclass. It really is. There's just so much good going on with this, and it's really not OP, right? That's what's so nice, is that there are some subclasses out there that are just straight up OP. And, you know, if you want to play those, that's totally fine. To me, this is an incredibly well-balanced subclass. It's very powerful, but it's really nothing game breaking. And that's what I really appreciate and love about this. A 9 out of 10 is really my sweet spot when I go to actually ranking these. That's really what I want to see. 10 out of 10s are really the ones that are busted strong, that are just kind of like, all right, you're just kind of power gaming by playing that. But if you've got a good story, I think anything like that can work. So of course, as promised, we've got our honorable mentions, and this is going to take us a minute because I have a lot of options for other subclasses that we could multi-class into that all give us some really meaningful value here. Let's get started with it. Number 1, the Shepherd Druid. The Shepherd Druid, and other druids would work too, but the Shepherd Druid especially is here for the summons. And so you can of course buff up your Fey creature that you make through Summon Fey, even the one that you get through Summon Elemental later on, you get a buff to those as well. Now you may want to take a few more levels in Druid in this case than what you did with the Fighter in my build, but either way, there's a lot of value in the Shepherd Druid there to help those summons. And of course you can have other summons as well, but it helps out with your Conjure Woodland Beings, you get Conjure Animals. There's a lot of really good stuff there as well. Next up, if you want a rogue, I would actually go with the Soul Knife Rogue. The Soul Knife Rogue is really cool, of course, with your psionic dice and just how lenient it is on certain things, of being able to roll things again if they fail the first time is just awesome. It's just a really cool subclass, one of my favorite rogues out there, but it works really well with this subclass as well. The Peace Cleric, of course, is next, one of the really busted ones. Peace Cleric is great. Of course, it helps to support any of your nearby allies. Even your summons could be caught up in your aura, which is really cool. Basically, it's just Bless on steroids, as long as you all stay next to each other. And yeah, you can't really be mad at that. Next up, the Lore Bard. And so the Lore Bard is one that I think people are very privy to when it comes to this subclass. And the reason is because the Lore Bard gets additional magical secrets very early on, right? And we would want that. We would want to take additional magical secrets at level 6. This would give us access to Counterspell. And what that means is bards are already the best counterspellers in the game because of Jack of all trades. However, this would be a charisma check if it's coming from a bard, which means that we could add our charisma modifier plus half of our proficiency modifier because of Jack of all trades that we got at level 2 of bard. Again, if you don't know how bard works, that'll be up in the icon above if I still have a card left. I don't know if I do or not. And then you would add your wisdom modifier on top of that. And so, yeah, you're gonna succeed most of the time on your counter spells. You're gonna have to roll really bad to fail that. So it's nice. It's nice. It makes a really reliable counter spell. So that's something that I would definitely consider there. Then for another fighter that's maybe a little less on the nose, the Samurai Fighter works really well here. You get to kind of double dip with the adding your wisdom to charisma checks, which can be interesting. So you're doubling your face of the party-ness, however you want to put that. So that's a lot of fun. So that can work there for sure. And of course, the free advantage on everything is always going to be great. And then finally, the Undead Warlock. The Undead Warlock, of course, allows you to force a fear effect, and that's always going to be really great. Again, you can take it through multi-classing and not necessarily worry about taking it as a racial option, and so that's really cool. There are plenty of ways to do that. Next up, we'll talk about our feats that we could take here, and Fighting Initiate is the first one that comes to mind. If you don't want to take Fighter, but you still want Menacing Attack, this is the way to do it. Of course, if you took something that has the Superior Technique fighting style, you could always take that and then go somewhere else. If you wanted to take a different fighter, you could take like Samurai Fighter and then do the fighting initiate or superior technique fighting style. Either way is fine. So you can get access to the to a way to force that fear effect, which is nice. Another feat that I don't talk about this enough really, and it's a great feat, but I never take it, and that's the alert feat. The alert feat is actually quite good in making you a lot more perceptive, and making you not able to be surprised, which can be huge, but it's also a half feat. And that's the big kicker. Of course, I'm always looking for great half feats, and the alert feat is always going to be good. The mobile feat, it's the mobile feat. We want to make sure that we're getting in position and putting creatures in places that they don't want to be. And the mobile feat, of course, can help us with that. And finally, Dragon Fear. Now, I'm not going to be talking about the Dragonborn really a lot because as a race, the Dragonborn really doesn't give us a ton here that we need. But with the Dragon Fear feat, a Dragonborn has some usage here, right? Because again, we can now force a fear effect, which works with Beguiling Twist. So I'm looking for options to force charm and frighten effects without necessarily blowing through spell slots. And this, of course, is going to be one way that we can do that. And finally, other racial options. I'm just giving you my top 2 here because there are several. But number 1 is going to be the Fallen Aasimar, again, because of the fear effect. Now, again, this is an action, and so it's not as valuable in my eyes as something like the Leonin, where it is a bonus action. So big difference there. And finally, Eladrin. The Eladrin is an elven race, which works really well with the theming here, but the Winter Eladrin, of course, can again fire off the Beguiling Twist. And so there's just so much synergy to be found with this. When it comes to Charm and Frighten, there are so many things that force these effects. And so you can really spam it and make sure that you get the most out of it by taking a second chance on another creature. So that's all I have for you for today. Make sure to leave a like on the video if you haven't already and subscribe. Of course, tomorrow our battle for week 4 of the UNPL is going to be out. Please check that out. I put a ton of work into those videos. It's basically fantasy football, but for competitive Pokemon, and it's so much fun. We have an absolute blast. I'm playing an absolute legend tomorrow, Grandmaster D-Ray, and it's going to be an amazing game. So I'm really looking forward to that. Again, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.